September 3rd, 2025. The Red Sea erupts. At sunrise, Iranian speedboats of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps swarm out of hidden coves, racing toward a U.S. Navy destroyer escorting civilian oil tankers. Overhead, Shahed 136 kamikaze drones buzz like swarms of angry hornets, their engines screaming in the morning air. Within minutes, the sea is alive with gunfire, missile locks, and the thunder of close-in defense guns. What was supposed to be a routine convoy escort has just exploded into the most dangerous naval clash of the year. This is the showdown the world feared. America and Iran colliding head-on in one of the planet's most critical choke points. And if you think this looks like the spark for a wider war, you're not alone. Tell us in the comments, could the Red Sea be where the next global conflict begins? The USS Carney, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, had been on station for weeks, shepherding oil tankers through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. On September 3rd, its mission was simple: keep the shipping lanes open, keep the tankers moving, and make sure Iranian interference never interrupts global trade. But at 06:17 local time, that mission collapsed. Dozens of Iranian fast attack craft roared out from the Yemeni coast, each one armed with heavy machine guns, rocket launchers, and man-portable missiles. Behind them, radar signatures confirmed at least 6 Shahed drones climbing low over the water, heading straight for the convoy. On the Carney's bridge, alarms screamed. Combat Information Center lit up with tracking data. The order was clear: weapons free. Phalanx CIWS turrets spun up, spewing streams of 20mm fire into the sky. The first drone disintegrated in a burst of flame, tumbling into the waves. Sailors on deck shouted as another Shahed slipped through, only to detonate against the sea mere yards from a civilian tanker. The blast rocked the merchant vessel, but it stayed afloat. Meanwhile, the Iranian speedboats closed in. The Carney's deck guns opened fire, churning the water with tracer rounds. One boat erupted in a fireball, another veered off trailing smoke. But there were too many. Within minutes, American sailors found themselves in a full-scale naval firefight, the first direct clash with Iranian forces in years. At 06:32, the Carney fired its first SM-2 missile. The trail of smoke streaked across the dawn sky, finding its target, a drone carrying a 40-kilogram warhead. The explosion lit the horizon, showering the sea with burning fragments. But seconds later, another Shahed tore past, slamming into the side of an empty tanker. The ship lurched violently, flames spreading across its deck. Civilian distress calls flooded the radio. For Washington, the moment was explosive. Donald Trump, addressing reporters that morning, declared, "Iran has attacked American sailors and threatened global trade. The United States will respond with overwhelming force." In Tehran, officials called the clash a legitimate defense against what they labeled illegal American patrols. But to sailors on the water, politics didn't matter. What mattered was survival, and the battle was just beginning. Because behind the speedboats and drones, intelligence showed something far more dangerous: Iranian missile launchers moving into position along the coast. The next phase would not be swarming boats or buzzing drones. It would be full-scale missile strikes. This is Navy warfare, and you're watching the world teeter on the edge of a wider war. If you want us to continue breaking down these dangerous flashpoints, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and don't forget the bell icon so you don't miss the next escalation. And remember, by becoming a sponsor of this channel, you don't just support Navy warfare. Part of your contributions go directly to help Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines and civilians suffering from Russian missile attacks. Every dollar makes a difference. September 3rd, 2025. First blood has been drawn in the Red Sea. The only question now, how far will America and Iran push this fight? By mid-morning on September 3rd, 2025, the Red Sea was no longer just a contested waterway. It was a battlefield. The USS Carney and its convoy had survived the initial wave of Iranian drones and speedboats, but the fight was far from over. Satellite intelligence showed something worse. Mobile Iranian missile batteries setting up along the Yemeni and Eritrean coasts, their launchers rising like fangs pointed at the sea. At 10:14 local time, the first volley came. Iranian Fateh 110 short-range ballistic missiles streaked skyward, their exhaust trails curling white against the blue. Their trajectory, the convoy. On board the Carney, alarms howled. Sailors scrambled as Aegis combat systems locked onto incoming threats. "Vampires inbound, multiple tracks!" the Combat Information Center roared. Within seconds, SM-6 interceptors leapt from vertical launch cells, climbing fast to meet the threat. The first intercept was perfect. A blazing fireball lit the sky as the missile shattered into fragments high above the water. Cheers erupted in the control room, but only for a moment. The second Iranian missile broke through. It slammed into the ocean barely 300 yards from an oil tanker, throwing a towering wall of water across the deck. The civilian crew screamed into radios as their vessel rocked violently. Minutes later, a third missile struck home. This time the target was no civilian. It was the USS Carney herself. The warhead detonated just off the ship's port side, a near miss but still devastating. The blast ripped antennas off the superstructure, knocked sailors off their feet, and flooded compartments with smoke. The destroyer lived, but she was bleeding. American retaliation was swift. At 10:37, the Carney unleashed a salvo of Tomahawk cruise missiles. Their exhaust plumes lit the horizon as they streaked low over the waves, hunting Iranian launch sites. Moments later, fiery explosions rolled across the coastline. Mobile missile launchers torn apart, radar stations reduced to rubble. But the U.S. Navy didn't fight alone. Overhead, a pair of FA-18 Super Hornets from a nearby carrier strike group dove into action. Their engines howled as they launched AGM-88 HARM missiles, targeting Iranian radar. Seconds later, the radars went dark, their operators never seeing the jets that killed them. Still, Iran was not finished. From deeper inland, another wave of missiles rose, this time longer-range Zulfigars, capable of reaching far across the sea. The destroyers braced, their interceptors running low. Every crewman knew the truth. This wasn't just harassment anymore. It was a coordinated strike, a warning that Tehran was willing to escalate. And in Washington, Donald Trump addressed the nation again. His tone was fire. Iran has crossed the line. The United States will destroy every missile that threatens our ships. We will not allow terrorists with rockets to close the Red Sea. For the sailors, it was no longer a political statement. It was survival. Every launch, every intercept, every explosion was life or death. Smoke and fire stained the Red Sea horizon, the air thick with the roar of close-in guns and the crack of missiles. The battle had become a storm, and it was far from over. This is Navy warfare, and you're watching the Red Sea crisis escalate in real time. What do you think? Was this Iran's calculated gamble, or did they underestimate America's willingness to respond? Tell us in the comments below. And remember, you can become a sponsor of this channel to keep simulations like this alive. Part of your donations goes directly to Ukrainian soldiers and civilians suffering from Russian missile strikes. Every contribution keeps Navy warfare strong and helps those fighting today's war. The Red Sea is now on fire. Missiles rain from the sky, ships fight for their lives, and the world wonders, will the next strike be the one that pulls the entire Middle East into war? By the afternoon of September 3rd, 2025, the Red Sea crisis had entered a new and deadly phase. Iranian Fateh and Zulfigar missiles had already scarred the sea, damaging the USS Carney and terrifying civilian crews. Now, the United States prepared its answer, not just defense, but a crushing counterstrike. At 14:20 local time, the order came from CENTCOM: neutralize Iranian launch capability along the Red Sea coast. Within minutes, the horizon came alive with American firepower. From the deck of the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, FA-18 Super Hornets screamed into the sky, their wings heavy with precision-guided bombs. Above them, EA-18G Growler electronic warfare jets switched on their jammers, blinding Iranian radars. At 20,000 feet, E-2D Hawkeye command aircraft relayed targeting data to every fighter, every destroyer, every submarine in the area. The air war was about to begin. At 14:46, the first strike hit. Super Hornets rolled in from the sea, dropping JDAM smart bombs onto Iranian coastal batteries. Explosions rippled across the shoreline, missile trailers flipping end over end in fire. Secondary blasts lit the sky as stored warheads cooked off, creating shockwaves strong enough to rattle windows in Yemeni villages miles away. But the Navy didn't stop at the coast. From beneath the waves, Virginia-class submarines launched their own barrage. Tomahawk cruise missiles arced inland, skimming desert ridges before diving onto Iranian radar stations and command bunkers. A live feed from a Predator drone captured the impact, a control center vanishing in a column of smoke and fire. By 1510, Iran's first line of missile batteries was rubble, but Tehran had prepared for this. Mobile launchers retreated inland, firing haphazard volleys before disappearing under camouflage. Iranian Shahed 136 drones swarmed back into the fight, dozens of them diving at the U.S. convoy like a storm of steel insects. The Carney, battered but still alive, spat fire from its phalanx cannons. Tracers carved the sky, drones exploded into flaming debris. Still, one slipped through, detonating against the hull of a Liberian-flagged tanker. Flames roared across its deck, black smoke towering into the afternoon sky. Civilian casualties mounted. That was the breaking point. At 15:30, the U.S. escalated. From Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, B-1B Lancer bombers lifted off, their bellies loaded with long-range cruise missiles. Hours later, their payloads struck deeper inside Iranian-controlled territory. Logistics depots, drone factories, even hardened shelters thought untouchable. The blasts rolled across the desert, a message written in fire. America would not just defend, it would dismantle. Iran struck back with propaganda. State media claimed dozens of U.S. ships destroyed, a fantasy disproven by satellite imagery. But the real impact was undeniable. Hundreds of Iranian troops killed, vital infrastructure in ruins, and still more American firepower inbound. In Washington, Donald Trump addressed the cameras. Iran chose escalation, we chose survival, and America will finish what it starts. In Tehran, Ayatollah Khamenei vowed vengeance, declaring the Red Sea a graveyard for American sailors. At sea, the truth was harsher than rhetoric. The Red Sea was a killing ground, littered with debris, oil slicks, and burning wrecks. For the sailors of the U.S. Navy, this was no longer a skirmish, it was war. And for the world, one chilling reality set in. Every missile, every drone, every counterstrike pushed the Middle East closer to a regional inferno. Saudi Arabia, Israel, Egypt, all now braced for spillover. The Red Sea showdown was no longer about one convoy. It was about who would control the lifelines of global energy. This is Navy warfare. What do you think? Was America right to launch a full counterstrike, or did this push the region one step closer to World War III? Tell us in the comments below. And remember, you can support this channel directly by becoming a sponsor. Your donations not only keep Navy warfare alive, but also go to Ukrainian soldiers defending their country and civilians rebuilding their lives after Russian missile strikes. Together, we fight disinformation with truth and help those on the front lines. The counterstrike had been launched, but as night fell over the Red Sea, everyone knew the next move would decide whether this remained a limited clash or exploded into a regional war. Night fell over the Red Sea on September 3, 2025, but the fire on the horizon never dimmed. Burning tankers cast orange reflections across black water. American destroyers ran at full combat readiness, their radars scanning ceaselessly. Iranian launchers kept firing sporadic volleys, daring the U.S. to escalate further. The question now wasn't if this clash would spiral into something bigger, it was when. At 21:12 local time, Iranian forces pushed again. A coordinated strike of Zulfiqar ballistic missiles and Shahed drones surged toward the convoy. American Aegis destroyers responded with a storm of interceptors, their vertical launch systems blazing like volcanic eruptions. One by one, missiles detonated in the night sky, streaks of fire raining into the sea. But no defense is perfect. One drone slipped through, slamming into the stern of a Panamanian-flagged tanker. The explosion killed 6 civilian crew instantly. Images of the burning ship raced across the internet, fueling outrage and fear worldwide. This time, America didn't just respond, it escalated. From Al Udeid Air Base, B-1B Lancers launched again, their payloads hammering Iranian military depots along the Yemeni coast. From the Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group, FA-18s hunted mobile missile launchers inland, and from submarines prowling in silence, another wave of Tomahawk missiles arced toward hardened command bunkers. The results were devastating. Iranian missile brigades along the coast were shredded. Drone stockpiles erupted in massive fireballs. Radar coverage collapsed in flames. But every strike carried a price: escalation. In Tehran, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei declared that the Red Sea will drown in American blood. Iranian state TV broadcast images of mobilized Revolutionary Guard units, and rumors swirled of preparations to launch missiles at U.S. bases in Bahrain and Qatar. The region reacted instantly. Saudi Arabia placed its Patriot batteries on high alert. Israel moved Iron Dome and Arrow systems toward the Red Sea corridor. Egypt reinforced its naval bases along the Suez. The United Arab Emirates quietly asked Washington whether the U.S. intended to strike Iran directly. Allies feared the obvious. This was no longer a naval skirmish. It was sliding toward a regional war. Meanwhile, on the sea itself, the sailors lived in a nightmare. Sleep was impossible. Crews manned guns in shifts, staring into the dark for the next incoming drone. Pilots sat strapped into cockpits, engines hot, waiting for orders to launch at a moment's notice. Every sonar ping, every radar spike felt like a trigger for the war's next stage. And yet, despite the blood and destruction, one fact became undeniable. Iran had failed to stop the convoy. By dawn on September 4th, American destroyers escorted crippled but still moving tankers safely into the Gulf of Aden. The lifeline of global oil had been kept open, at enormous cost. For Washington, it was victory. Donald Trump declared, "The United States Navy kept the sea lanes open, defeated Iran's attacks, and will continue to destroy any threat to freedom of navigation." For Tehran, it was defiance. Ayatollah Khamenei vowed more strikes, warning that the Americans will pay for every drop of Iranian blood. And for the world, it was a warning. A regional flashpoint had nearly detonated into a full-scale Middle Eastern war. The Red Sea, once just a shipping route, had become the front line of a global power struggle. This is Navy warfare. What do you think? Did America's counterstrikes prevent a wider war, or did they push the region to the edge of World War III? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And remember, by subscribing and tapping the bell, you'll never miss these frontline simulations. By becoming a sponsor of this channel, you're not just fueling Navy warfare, you're helping us support Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines and civilians rebuilding their lives after Russian missile strikes. Your support makes both our work and their fight possible. September 3rd, 2025 will be remembered as the night the Red Sea turned into a battlefield. The missiles have stopped for now, but the war drums are still beating.